if you're a communist, that's your choice. I don't want to live under communism. I travel and I go to communist countries. I want to have freedom. You know, the wonderful thing I can say on your show now that I don't like President Ramaphosa, or I do like him, and I don't go to jail. But you do that in their countries, you might not ever see you again. Unless you agree with their socialistic and their communistic ideas, they don't want to let you talk. They talk about freedom. They want you to come and talk. But when you stand up and talk, if it's not what they like, they turn your car over and they stop you talking, stop these people just pouring in there, gangsters, people with diseases, spreading fentanyl and killing 200,000 young people coming in from China.
Gary Player is actually sending a really heavy-handed message, especially to the ANC comrades. And I think the South Africa Communist Party, which is actually pushing for communism and socialism in South Africa, actually argues that he hates communism. Communism has actually not led many countries, to progress, according to his view. Let's quickly listen to Gary Player break down communism and how South Africa might be impacted if communism, socialism, especially coming from the left, could impact the future of South Africa going forward. And share your thoughts in the comments.
Well, the fortunate thing about traveling the way I have, it's been this great education to learn about other people's cultures and to have respect for their religious point of views and not be emphatic that you right all the time and to have appreciation. One of the difficulties in America in the last while has been, if you say you're a Trump fan, which I am, people become very argumentative and almost nasty, whereas I was not a Kamala Harris fan at all with her policies, her woke policies. But if they tell me about her, I listened with great interest, but also with respect. And that's the opinion. And this is something that people have got to do, is to learn to understand somebody else's opinion, because you might learn something that you didn't know.
Talk to me about Trump and what kind of man he is. You've spent time with him on the golf course.
Well, I've known him for over 30 years, and I play golf with him almost every month. In fact, I'm going to America tonight, and I'll be playing with him next week again. Actually, I found him an incredibly wonderful man. The stuff I read about him, it's demoralizing. I've come to the conclusion I do not believe anything I read. Well, you look on your phone. One week somebody says I'm dead. The next week they say Johan Rupert is dead. I mean, the stuff that's AI is going to be a great advantage, but a great disadvantage, the stuff that can be said and done. Today, my friend, they got Donald Trump and Elon Musk marrying each other and having a baby. I mean, I don't know how sick you can get, but be that as it may. Now, I'm around Donald Trump a lot. First of all, he's going to change the world for the better. He's going to get rid of all this woke stuff. In America, they have young boys cutting their testicles out at the age of 10 years of age without parental consent. He's going to stop that. He's going to stop all these people that come to America and pull down the American flag and then put up the Hamas flag and then burn the American flag and say death to America. He said, Gary, I'm kicking them all out. President Eisenhower kicked out over 1 million people. Can you imagine somebody in South Africa coming and pulling our beautiful flag down and putting up a Hamas flag and burning our flag and saying death to South Africa? In most countries you do that, they'd shoot you on the spot. Iran, you'd be shot immediately. Once you lose lack of law and order, you're in big trouble. And the thing that Donald Trump will bring back is law and order. He's not a diplomat. He says, I don't profess to be, but neither was Winston Churchill, the greatest leader ever. But his principle, good education, good manners, standing up, building a strong army, having discipline in schools, stopping these universities with a socialist, almost anti-communist rule. Now, if you're a communist, that's your choice. I don't want to live under communism. I travel and I go to communist countries. I want to have freedom. The wonderful thing I can say on your show now that I don't like President Ramaphosa, or I do like him, and I don't go to jail. But you do that in their countries, you might not ever see you again. So we got to realize how much what freedom means, and the way these American soldiers in the time of Hitler, how they fought at Normandy, and people like my brother and others in South Africa and Australia and Britain, how we fought against the rule of Nazism and communism so that we could have freedom in our lives. Freedom is a very, very special gift. If you don't have freedom, I tell you what, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think it's worthwhile living. And this
Gary,
man,
do you count President Trump President-elect Trump as one of your best friends?
I would say he's a very good friend of mine. And I think that if he can, and when he first became president, he said to me, Gary, I don't believe in wars. He says, there will be no war under my administration. I said, Mr. President, that's not possible. Every president there's been a war. There was no war during his reign. If he can get rid of and stop the war in Ukraine and stop the war in the Middle East, he will go down as the greatest president America has ever had. I mean, you know, it's just so sad when you think, when you've got a family like I've got, and I've got a school where 130 young black children that go to school, thinking of that children being bombed and killed, those beautiful little black children. I mean, it's barbaric. And so for him to say, I want to have no wars and stop all this woke system and coming to my country and saying death to America. But there's certain people who criticize him for that. Well, there again, it's their opinion.
How is he a good golfer?
He is not a good golfer. He's an outstanding golfer. There's no president in the history of the world that could ever come even close to him. And he's got golf courses as part of his business. And so he's a great believer in employment. And now here's the thing, I've read a few editorials in our papers about him. And I say, well, I wonder if this man has ever met him. How do you form an opinion, a genuine opinion, an honest opinion if you don't know the man? Simply by what you read? Can you believe anything you read in the world today? Nothing. So now I'm sitting there at the table with him at breakfast. He calls the lady over and says, Mary Lou, you've done a great job for my members here. Come and, African black woman, come and see me at the end of the month. I'm going to take care of you. I go outside. He brings the greenkeeper up to me. And he says, I want you to meet my greenkeeper who's doing such a great job. Children. Now, if a man loves children, he's a good man. The kids come to the course there. He says, sit down at my table. He signs a hat for them. He gives them all a presidential pen. He goes into the unions and he meets the guys and talks to them. I mean, you've got to have compassion. You've got to have a personality. There's no substitute for personal contact. And I just think he's fantastic. He's got a chance. He's got a chance to go down as the greatest president. It's a massive, massive undertaking. But if he can do that and to stop all this crazy woke system, things that are happening to children that you and I never ever thought, pornography taught at school and that kind of universities with their woke system, I can't go because I'm a middle of the road man, but on the conservative side. If I'm asked to go, which I have been asked to go to many universities in the world, I wouldn't go to a university at all. In America, even Mrs. Clinton, who's an ultra-liberal, the other day, I think it was at Columbia, I stand for correction, at Columbia University, she couldn't finish her talk. She had to get out of there with security. Unless you agree with their socialistic and their communistic ideas, they don't want to let you talk. They talk about freedom. They want you to come and talk. But when you stand up and talk, if it's not what they like, they turn your car over and they stop you talking. That's all going to stop. He's going to bring sanity to the world. Sanity.
This is such a great opportunity for our Biz News viewers, and I know that you've got a very pressing agenda ahead of you in terms of getting ready for your flight to the US. But is there anything that we haven't covered that you are going to leave this interview thinking, I wish I had spoken about?
Very much so. I love this country so much. I've represented South Africa way longer than anybody in the history of our country. 73 years I've been an ambassador. I brought people to this country to invest. I've been on television more than any South African. I've been appeared in front of people live way more than any South African. And this country means so much to me. I was offered $50 million to live in America and turned it down. Now, here's the thing, and I see what's happening here perturbs me. Having an open border. And that's the other thing that Trump's going to do. He's going to stop these people just pouring in there, gangsters, people with diseases, spreading fentanyl and killing 200,000 young people, coming in from China. He's going to stop all that. Now,
yeah, brilliant. So I think it's really interesting. I think this is part of what Gaten McKenzie was speaking about in the last speech, where he, whenever issues about racism actually occurs, it's actually easy to really point to the bad, but also he actually tries to also think about the good that blacks actually do to whites, Indians actually do to coloreds, and whites actually carry out for blacks. And Gary Player here, you could hear from his, interview, he spoke about how he built schools for black children, and, actually how he spoke about how his money goes back to the villages in South Africa. He actually argues also that he has helped many squatter camps. He visits many squatter camps and really helps them. I know many of these issues actually been critiqued in the last video I made. I saw many of your comments who actually argued that how many people at squatter camps has he changed their lives. But at the end of the day, I think it's actually a gesture that probably should actually show the possibilities of what it is to assist a fellow South African, so to speak. And so many critiques have gone to the fact that even the likes of Julius Nyerere, he actually spoke to the fact that he doesn't like this word charity, because charity speaks to the fact that there's a superior and an inferior, and that especially coming from the West, in terms of putting money or trying to help the poor, there's actually a much more solidification of that whole superiority complex by the a white over the black or something like that. But at the end of the day, in the words of Prince Mashele, he actually argues that when he moves around the townships in black communities, he's actually really heartbroken, because he sees the hopelessness of many black people. Many black people are so hopeless. Their level of alcoholism in townships is actually so overwhelming, and many times he really thinks that the black majority in South Africa do not see a hope. And at the end of the day, what would be the solution? What the solution would be probably to really slowly start learning, on how a community, how our people grow. I think black South Africans might slowly now, I know that the problem anyway is actually a structural violence in the words of the advocate, one of the advocates that actually represented South Africa in the ICJ. He actually spoke about the fact that what is really, harming the black majority in South Africa, the likes of Gary Player and all, Rob Hurst, and these white billionaires in South Africa would do their best to an extent, but at the end of the day, the real help and assistance that would really bring blacks out of poverty in South Africa would actually come from themselves. And I think the major problem right now that actually South Africa is facing is what that advocate calls a structural violence. So in other words, it's the economic structure that actually were inherited from the apartheid era up to the independence era that is impacting a sort of violence against the blacks, that is not allowing them probably access to capital and all that. And on the long term, with the impact of things like SASSA, social welfare, these guys are not able to see themselves rise up from their condition to really strive for business, to strive for production, to strive to, build, businesses or produce, so to speak. Even Prince Mashele argues, he speaks about the warehouses he sees along, in South Africa. They're really beautiful warehouses. But what those warehouses remind him about is the loss of jobs in South Africa. So those warehouses actually store goods that actually come from abroad to be sold in South Africa, meaning South Africa is no more producing. That's why we have unemployment rates of like 33.3% thereabout in South Africa. Many blacks, the black majority, there's no job, there are no prospects for jobs, you see. And at the end of the day, it then naturally leads to the emergence of a form of xenophobic consciousness against the other in South Africa. And so the likes of Gary Player would do their bit. When I study his life, him building schools for black children, him giving money to the villages and all that would help to an extent. But at the end of the day, the black majority or the majority poor in South Africa would need sort of like a mindset shift to slowly start moving from that dependency kind of like mentality to a mentality that we seeks to produce and really escape from the throes of the economic structure that actually keeps them poor. It's really difficult, I know, really difficult, and I think this is where I expected the ANC over the 30 years it has been in democracy to have actually impacted or helped to raise the standard of living for the different people groups in South Africa, colored, even the colored community. The kind of poverty I also see in the videos in the colored community amuses me. It's really strange how the level of inequality in South Africa is. But anyway, that's that way I'll be stopping. Is we hope that South Africa would actually be able to see these things and really move forward. But I don't know, what do you guys think about Gary Player's speech here in this video? Share your thoughts in the comments.